Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Middle Class Rockstar, and it's episode number 54, and it's the first episode of 2021, a year beginning after the year that everybody wants to get out of. Although, who knows, maybe this is a continuation of 2020, maybe January 1st is no different than December 31st, except for it's a day later. Who knows? All will tell in time, but like so many people, I believe in new beginnings. I believe in goal setting and, a chance to recharge and start over with new enthusiasm. And hopefully the world agrees with that. Hopefully things calm down. We can get back to some sense of normalcy. And wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever your goals are or aren't, I wish you a very pleasant 2021. I talked about goals a little bit last episode, what things I wrote down on the Best of 2020 episode, what things I wrote down in 2020, what things I achieved, which things I didn't. And I just wrote down my goals for this coming year. I do this every year in a spreadsheet a few days ago, and there's plenty of things on there. One that can be measured very accurately is I want to release a high-quality audio and video song 50 times in 2021. So I'm going to do it every week, give myself 2 weeks for a break, whether that be Thanksgiving and Christmas or, a week in the summer, whatever it is. And I've already started it. I've been going into Third and James every couple months and just recording a bunch of solo songs. Been setting up cameras, borrowing cameras from friends, and pressing record, doing a few takes. The engineer, Grant Gibson, there at Third and James, mixes it and masters it and sends it to me, and I sync the video, audio. And I'm going to start releasing those, starting with a cover of Paul Simon's Graceland that I do on a lap steel guitar. So I'm looking forward to doing something measurable like that, just to build YouTube, build the online presence a little bit. Amongst other things, I'm trying to, and I think probably a lot of people feel this way, I'm trying to balance the grind, the branding, the grind, the doing everything that you should be doing for your career to build your business, blah, 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 but also making sure to enjoy life and let things happen. And I'm kind of trying to strike a balance there, where it's okay to wake up at 9:45 every once in a while, but also, getting up ready to conquer the world every morning and doing those necessary things, writing more, whatever I need to do for my career. So, it's a new beginning. It's always kind of a positive time at the beginning of the year for that reason, especially after a year such as this. Exciting news for Middle Class Rockstar Podcast. We've teamed up with Chris K's Colorado Playlist, and any of our Colorado-related artists get played on Chris K's Colorado Playlist. About an 8-minute section of this episode will be played on Chris K's Colorado Playlist, which then gets broadcast to, I believe, 27 now FM frequencies across Colorado. And there's a brand new frequency in Alamosa that just picked up Chris K's show. And congrats to Chris K. He's been doing the Colorado Playlist for a long, long time. And, he's got one of the most successful shows in the state in terms of who all plays it. And that, by the way, at that new station is Alamosa Taos 88.7 FM. You can also listen in Aspen, 88.3 FM, or Basalt, Redstone, 88.5 FM, or perhaps Carbondale and Glenwood, 88.1. Cool stuff. So big thanks to Chris K, who's been on the podcast a couple times and is really helping out Middle Class Rockstar by playing some of these episodes, portions of some of these episodes on his show, and so it's getting out onto the FM wavelengths. Really cool stuff. Thanks, Chris. Today's guest is Cary Morin. He's one of the very few repeats we've had. He was first on, I think was the beginning of sometime in mid-2000, I don't know, 2018, 2019, he was on the show, and that's episode 19, and I drove to his house in Fort Collins, and not only did I interview him, but I interviewed his wife, Celeste Diorio, and she's episode 18 of the podcast. And she is a brilliant music business person and singer as well. And on that episode, we talked about grants and booking and management. And she does all that kind of stuff, not just for Cary, but for some other very successful artists as well. And she's really a big part of the success that Cary's been having the last few records. And her episode is one of my absolute favorites. So go back and listen to episode 18, and then that'll take you right into episode 19, which is Cary's first appearance on the podcast. And they were both very welcoming, welcomed me into their home and chatted with me for a while, answered my questions. It was awesome. So if you're looking for more background on Cary, before we get into this, episode 19 really, is we just talk about Cary and you get the full background. On this episode, we do that a little bit, but I didn't want to repeat too much, so we sort of jumped right into some other things, namely his newest record, Dockside Saints, which came out on August 7th and has been doing very, very well. He's been getting all kinds of press. Glide Magazine, Tower Records, Cowboys and Indians Magazine, which can be found at Barnes & Noble. That's a huge press outlet. It's everywhere. And it was the number one record in Colorado, I believe. I'm trying to remember the name of that chart. Was it the Roots Music Report, maybe? It's number one record in Colorado for a couple months as well. So it's a great record, and if you've heard Cary's music before, he's a virtuoso finger-style guitarist, blues-style guitarist, folk-style, great singer and songwriter. And this album is really neat because it's not his guitar playing in the forefront, which it would normally be, and it's absolutely exceptional. But this one, he does something a little different. It was recorded at Dockside Studios in Lafayette, Louisiana. It was produced by Tony Daigle, who's won multiple Grammys as an engineer and producer. And the band is incredible. It's cool where they took these songs, and it sort of combines that Piedmont blues style with Cajun and Creole and Zydeco, and it's really, really neat. I love all of Cary's stuff, but this album I think is my favorite. And the last time I interviewed Cary, whenever that was, for episode 19, he was just starting the process of writing the charts for these tunes, and I got to help out and write a few charts for these songs, which was an honor to get to help out on the project in a little way. It was really neat for me. We also chat about 2020 and being a touring musician, as you would on this podcast in 2020. And Cary's somebody, he and Celeste, they get in the car, they take their dog, and they're self-sustaining on the road. They've got a little camper, and they sometimes spend 8 or 9 months out of the year on the road, doing festivals, doing club dates, recording, doing opening acts, whatever, doing headlining dates. They're really seriously touring, and they're doing it together, and that's the life. So 2020 was especially tricky for them without another outlet necessarily to do things, and so they've taken the live streaming very seriously. He does it on his YouTube channel, and they actually go down the street to a space to do it and make it look really professional, high quality sound. So if you go on over to Cary Morin's YouTube channel, they're still doing live streaming stuff, and I think will be for the foreseeable future. But anyway, did I talk enough? Cary's awesome. Celeste is awesome. We have a great episode. I guess here it is. If you want to support the podcast, giving us a rate and review wherever you listen is a huge, huge help. It only takes a second. It's completely free, and it helps me out a lot. If you're in a position to help out in a monetary way, I'm now on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sydow, Sydow. For as little as the price of 1 cup of coffee per month, you can help make sure that this podcast keeps growing. I want to say a quick thanks to our sponsors, PQ Mastering for one. Patrick at PQ Mastering puts the finishing touches on this podcast, and for any of your audio or restoration needs, you can go to www.pqmastering.com. Also, Narrator Music. Go to www.narratorrf.com for simple and affordable licensing for sync. Cary, welcome back.
Hi everybody. It's great to be back on your show. Your show is really gaining a lot of notoriety.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. How did you? I'm going to interview you. How did you come up with this idea, and did you have any idea that it was going to be a long-lasting thing?
My initial goal was to get through 10 episodes. And I just wanted a way to chat with people that like I don't normally talk with. You and I are friends, but we don't go out and grab lunch on Wednesday afternoons. Um,
Mm-mm.
because we live an hour and a half apart, but it's really
Right.
nice to get to catch up. And I had no idea I was going to end up meeting so many cool people and making, I think, lifelong friends with some people just from talking to them for an hour.
Well, that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's good, and now all these episodes are getting played on Chris K's Colorado playlist,
I saw that.
and so it'll be going out across Colorado to the airwaves.
That
Uh,
is good news.
but but you uh, have plenty of notoriety on the airwaves in Colorado because your new record, Dockside Saints, was number 1 2 months in a row.
In Colorado?
Yeah, on the was it the Roots Music Report or whatever, one of those charts. You came up
That's
number 1 the last 2 months.
that's great. We kept an eye on the Roots report for quite a while actually, and it was fun to see it go up and appear, and it was nice to know that people were listening to it. It got it got really close to being on the Americana charts, and I was like, I've never been on the Americana charts,
Yeah,
so we were like really watching that, and it got to like one more spot, and we would have been on it for like a minute,
yeah.
and it just didn't have the steam. But anyway, I'm really glad that people are listening to it, and it's been a fun ride.
Well, in the Americana charts, that's huge to even get that close to it because it is very competitive. And, your record's on there with, what the Avett Brothers and Mumford and Sons and Nathaniel Rateliff put out. So that's a
Yeah.
that's a pretty huge accomplishment. And as far as the promotion was concerned on this record, where did you guys really put your efforts? Were you focusing on terrestrial radio or Spotify, or what was the thought process there?
Um, we were we had I think a 4 month association with Conqueror, and he really helped us. Cary Baker, just a really fine publicist, helped us get it into a lot of places. Celeste does a lot of the radio stuff herself, and yeah, as far as print, I think that Carrie really had a lot to do with that. And we had two other publicists, but they were both really more geared towards social stuff, the Facebook, and they really beefed up my MySpace page.
Yeah, yeah, good, good.
And anyway, I think that Cary Baker really had a lot to do with all that print media.
Yeah.
And well, actually, he was getting like some songs to be premiered on websites too. So I guess he had some things to do with the internet. And I think that his name does carry a lot of weight in radio as well. So I'm sure that it was helpful in that regard.
Yeah.
It's the first time that we've ever worked with Conqueror, and uh, he's just a really great guy. I'm so glad that we got a chance to work with him, and now we're friends. And it's one good thing about this business. Putting out a new album, we meet a lot of people. Like if we're out at conferences or stuff, or just through the process of making an album, we meet a lot of people and learn about a lot of stuff that we didn't know that we can take advantage of for the next album.
Yeah,
So it's a process.
that's great. And I want to get into all sorts of things about the album and recording it in Louisiana and those things. But for the people who didn't hear the first interview, first off, if you didn't hear the first interview, go back and listen to episode 19, the first Cary Morin episode, where we have all kinds of great things and stories from growing up in Montana and things like that. And also episode 18 with his wife, Celeste Diorio, who's also the manager and booking agent and does a ton of stuff and sings with you too sometimes. So
Hmm.
two things to check out. But just as a quick recap, how did you first get into songwriting and guitar? You have a really unique guitar style, the finger picking in open D, and the way you play is truly unique, the way you play and sing and write. How did you first get into it?
Well, the D thing started out from the suggestion of a friend of mine. I used to play solo or duo shows with my friend Herbie Sparks, who back in the day used to own Wildwood Music in Longmont when it first opened.
Hmm.
He owned that with Steve Messplay, and Steve eventually went off and started his Wildwood, and then Herbie kept his store going in Longmont for years and years, and we after we stopped playing shows together. We remained friends, and we eventually just started fishing a lot. We would fish a couple of times a week.
Wow.
We would either go up and walk the rivers around here, or we would fish on lakes. And he would typically pick me up at my house at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and off we would go. One time he showed up with like an old Seagull guitar or something. It was like not really a flashy guitar, but it was tuned to D. And he said, "Why don't you take this in and hang it on the wall, and don't retune it, leave it in D, and just pick it up when you can, and see if you can figure something out with it." And I swear that guitar sat there on the wall for probably a year.
Yeah.
I picked it up a couple of times and none of it made sense. And then one afternoon, I picked it up and I had like a couple of minor breakthroughs, like, oh, this makes sense. And I didn't get lessons or anything, and I didn't look anything up on the internet. It probably would have sped up the process considerably had I thought to do that. But anyway, after that, it got to the point where I couldn't put it down. I was just fascinated with some of the chord structure, and the tones just were so different than playing in standard tuning. And I just played and played and played, and eventually I started bringing it to shows, and I would play a couple of songs in open D, and then that got more and more, and I stopped bringing a guitar tuned in standard about 3 years into the process. I think I felt confident enough that I could play all the stuff that I was doing before I got the open D guitar, and then I was writing everything from that point on in open D. And it's what I really love about it is, to this day I am still learning, and this is what, like, I'm about 13 or 14 years in, maybe maybe
Hmm.
it's not that long. So somewhere between 10 and 13, 14 years. I, every time I pick up that guitar to play at home, I always learn something about that tuning that I didn't know that day. So it's an ongoing process for me, and it really was just like learning the guitar all over again. Except for, you start out with the dexterity and the knowledge of, tone and how
Yeah.
things are supposed to work. So you got a leg up in that regard. But yeah, I really love it. And I experiment with that tuning on stage. And I'm here to tell you, sometimes it doesn't work out. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go, man, wouldn't this be cool if this worked? Or that didn't work. I would have been
Yeah.
cool had it worked. But I'm always willing to take a chance on stuff like that, and yeah, it's been a really really fun process. I suggest everybody do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Turn your guitar somewhere you have no idea what you're doing and see what happens.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly that.
um, well, your guitar playing is phenomenal, and you're getting praise from the likes of Dave Bromberg and all kinds of people in the scene for your picking. One thing I noticed about this new album, which came out August 7th, I think. Yeah, August 7th, as I'm checking my notes,
Hmm.
Dockside Saints. One thing I noticed about this album is your guitar is typically, or your acoustic style is typically in the forefront. And on this record, I listened through to the first track and I said, "Man, that was rock and roll." And it was still in there, but there was the production. There was lots of other things too. It had a Cajun and Zydeco feel to it. How did this particular record, because it sounds different from the rest, how did this one first come about?
I was doing a show in Lafayette, Louisiana, and a friend of mine came in to see the show, and I think the next night he said, I'm going to invite Tony Daigle. He's a Grammy award-winning producer, and he lives just a couple of blocks from where you're playing. And if he would come out, that would just be great. And so the next night he did. He showed up, and he ended up staying for the whole show. And we spoke after the show, and he said, if you ever decide to make an album around here, I'm your guy. And it kind of started out like that, and then we went out and took a tour of the Dockside Studio, and that sealed the deal. But when we first saw that room and the board there and the property, and we were determined that we were destined to make an album at Dockside, which is in Maurice, Louisiana, and so I think it took about a year to get it together. Dave Nezat, who used to play in bands around here, he lives in Lafayette, owns a business out there now. But he was very helpful in assisting us in finding players to help put this album together. And the people that we ended up with are all like really well known, accomplished players from around that part of Louisiana, and regulars at the Jazz Fest, and they're. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that these guys had assembled an all-star cast, and everybody that signed on to do the album had heard very little of the pre-production.
Right.
For whatever reason, said yes, and that's how it all came together. We went out. I think it was just a little over a year later. We booked a week at the studio, and everybody showed up, and we played for a week, and it was a really fun process. And through that, we became good friends with all those players. Corey, the accordion player, I was already acquainted with, but everybody else I met at the studio. And yeah, Tony just did a fantastic job. The guy he's amazing to watch him behind the board, and he produced the thing. He really encouraged some performances out of all of us. That the album wouldn't be the same without him there, and just something about that room that I think that room really inspires magic. There's been a lot of great recordings come out of that studio, and that somebody had actually told me that about that room before we got there, and I didn't pay that no never mind, but they were right. It was just being there, being on the bayou, and just something about that area just really is inspirational. So we're really proud of the album. Happy to have had the opportunity to create with all those fine players.
Well, and with all those big time players in the room, and your producer, like you said, Tony Daigle, with 20 Grammy nominees, and he's done stuff with John Cleary and BB King and stuff. Was there any nerves going in there to work with that group of folks?
No, because everybody, yeah, there's no egos or anything. From the moment that we got there, and we were already pretty well acquainted with Tony, and everybody else that played too. There was everybody was just really cool, and it it was kind of like you've done shows where you show up and you don't really know everybody in the band, and it's like it's a great process to have a musical introduction to everybody, as well as get to know them on a personal level. And I was aware of the success that Tony's had as a producer and as an engineer in the past, but he just doesn't come off as that kind of guy. He's just like he's a really great guy and really helpful, and the encouragement that I got from everybody, being kind of the new guy around the studio, was really helpful, and just it made me feel really good about the whole process. I'd like to go out and do it again, actually.
Is there going to be whenever that's allowed, is there going to be a volume 2?
I think so. I haven't written any songs for it, but right now I'm kind of really concentrating on Ghost Dog, because everybody in this band, we all live in the same town, so that's kind of helpful.
Yeah.
And with the time that everybody has right now to dedicate to a project, it makes sense for us to work on Ghost Dog and not go out and start another album in Louisiana. But yeah, I think that we'll do that at some point. I think with the success of Dockside Saints, it would probably be a mistake not to do another one.
Right. And you said you hadn't started writing any songs for it yet. How is that process for you? Do you have a project in mind and then start writing songs for that project, or do you have a daily time where you write? How does that come about for you?
It's a little bit of that. The way that it usually turns out is like I'll from time to time I'll come up with an idea and jot it down and pair it up with some maybe some guitar stuff that I have tucked away somewhere. But when studio time for a project starts to get closer, and I learned that I'm 5 songs short of a full album, then I will write for the album. But
Yeah.
and I'm doing that right now. I'm writing songs that don't really have any any project in mind. They'll end up being whatever they end up.
Yeah.
But like I said, the focus right now is really Ghost Dog.
And talk about Ghost Dog a little bit.
Well, Ghost Dog started out actually about 2 years ago, and I was on the road quite a bit, but I would take the time. There's this kind of lag time uh, during the year in the fall and the late fall and early winter when we don't travel as much as we do the rest of the year, and then it kind of picks up again in January. But at one of those times, I was visiting with a friend of mine here in town, Jason Larson, and we had talked about just getting together and playing. You know, we didn't really have a band in mind. We didn't have songs, any songs in particular. It was just kind of something to do, you know, during that slow time of the year. And uh, it started to get interesting, and I started having ideas about making an album and maybe having a band in Fort Collins because I haven't really played with a band in Fort Collins since I was playing with Young Ancients.
Yeah.
So we started doing that, and then we the personnel started to get larger, and then it would shift. You know, somebody would leave and somebody else would come in, and so we ended up with Jordan Pasquin, who's been playing drums with Right Minded for a while now, and Luke Hunter is playing bass with us, and Celeste is singing, and I started just playing acoustic guitar with this band, and then, you know, with the pandemic, sitting around the house a lot, this one afternoon I was thinking, well, you know, I used to play electric guitar for a living. It's not like I don't know how to do it, and so I decided to get out an electric for one of our rehearsals, and I was at, you know, when we first got this band together and eventually gave it a name, and we were actively starting to rehearse with live shows in mind. I was dead set against playing electric guitar, although I wasn't against having somebody play electric guitar in the band, which now AJ Fullerton does.
Yeah.
But at the time, I just really wanted to just stick with the acoustic. But now, yeah, I'm kind of like I'm starting to get interested in electric again after all these years of not playing it. I don't think I've really played it on electric in, geez, oh, 8 or 9 years, I think. So I dusted off my old PRS. I got my effects out and everything, you know. Like, it's been a lot of fun.
Looks
So
like you
anyway,
got an electric behind you, maybe.
yeah, that's another. That used to be my slide guitar. It doesn't really get much airtime anymore with AJ in the band, but
Yeah.
so that's kind of how Ghost Dog came together, and we get together and play 2 times a week or so, and it's kind of weird. I've never been in a situation where you have so much time to devote to rehearsals. Usually, we get like almost enough songs to go out and do a show, and then we go out and start doing shows, and that's where the meaningful rehearsal really happens. Is a lot of times, you know, you stumble across really cool things on stage, but yeah, we're going about it in a way that I haven't done since I was a kid, and just really rehearse songs. We removed our dining table in our dining room and
Yeah.
replaced it with a drum kit. And our living room has become sort of a studio. We don't have anybody over to the house. We don't entertain. We don't use the dinner table. We
Right.
thought, let's just make this comfortable for the band, and we got we got an in-ear system. We just actually went into the studio for the first time with this band. We went over to the blasting room a couple days ago and recorded one song, which is another thing I've never done. I've never done a one-off before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that our intentions with Ghost Dog is getting more serious by the day, and that's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of a project where I think everybody has the same goal, and we're excited about the songs and excited about the future
Yeah.
when there is a future again.
Well, any band that can get you to take out your kitchen table. I mean, you sound like the perfect house for a teenage punk rocker.
It is. It
Yeah.
is absolutely. The when the kids come over, which our children do drop by from time to time,
Yeah.
and they have to like navigate their way through the house because there's gear everywhere now, and it used to be totally the opposite. I think that we were really conscious of our living space, and coming off the road, we wanted our living space to be home and not look like a studio or a club. But now it totally looks like
Totally.
that.
Well, when you can't go anywhere, and that's something I wanted to mention is I remember last time we talked, you were saying you guys spent about 9 months on the road a lot of years. Um, you've got your converted vehicle in the driveway, and so you're not doing other things to make money. You are a full-time musician, and that's what you guys do. You really rely on the road in a way that a lot of 2020 musicians don't anymore. How has this been navigating things the last 9 months? I mean, you put out Dockside Saints, and I hear the tour is not going well.
We how did we release that? Well, it was like a Facebook show, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing shows at a sound studio that's about 5 blocks from our house here, called the Launching Pad. And so we invited, I think there were 6, maybe 7 people in the audience for the album release, which was like it was around the 7th. It was around the time that the album was released.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're trying to continue to do a show or two a week virtually, just in an effort to keep me playing guitar and try and stay relevant somehow. I think that we could go out actually and do shows. We could go down to Florida or Mississippi or Alabama or Texas and do shows, but we've just decided that we're just gonna stay here and just keep doing what we're doing and work on the band and work on recordings and well, for the foreseeable future, I think that's what we're gonna do.
And
And
really,
yeah.
you have stayed on the live streaming. I know it was a fad for a few months where everybody who's ever played a live show is doing a live stream, and you've stayed with it, and you've been on a schedule, and it looks professional. Like you said, you go to the place down the street to do it, and the cameras are not just waist up. So you've been putting trousers on for the last 9 months. You've been going to work, baby.
They had to talk me into that, actually.
So have people continued to come to the online shows and contribute? And I mean, what's that cycle been like from your first live stream, say, to how it is now?
Well, I'll get to that. I got to tell you that when we were on tour in March,
Yeah.
and I think that I had a deal, like a house deal with a museum in Key West, Florida, and we were on our way there, and we stopped for a couple of days at this campground, and I think the information on the pandemic was starting to get a little clearer, and there was more information on it, and we started to think, and our conversation started to go towards, maybe we should go home. And then one day we thought, we're going to call this month-long residency that I had in Key West and say, hey, we're not going to be able to make it. Our thought process is that, we're going to get down to Key West, and then everything's going to get shut down because they have all these big boats coming in, and it's such a vacation place. It just didn't seem like a good idea. And sure enough, on our drive home, Key West got shut down, and they asked all non-residents to leave town. So we would have gotten booted anyway. So we're driving home, and I think it took us maybe 3 days, sort of a leisurely drive from Florida to Colorado.
Yeah.
And at some point I said, maybe it wouldn't be cool if when we get home, we could like set up an iPad and just do like a live show from the living room. And, maybe we could like collaborate with some of our friends down south, or some friends around Colorado, and do shows together. And I think by the time that we got home, people were already doing it. Here, I thought I had like a really original idea.
Yeah.
And so now it's become our new reality. We took some time off around the 4th of July. I think we took a couple of weeks off because we thought, people were going to be busy camping and holiday stuff going on. And that's the only break that we've taken. I have some friends that do shows every night, and we do certainly one a week, and then every other Wednesday we do an early show, like a 2:00 show for all of our friends in Europe. And in the beginning, I think our numbers got up to, 60 or so people. Now it seems to hover around 40 people. And I know that there are some guys out there that get, thousands of people that show up to their live stream things. And going into it, we didn't know what to expect. I didn't know. Anybody in the world can tune in. So, it made perfect sense to me that we would have audiences, but it works the way that it works. However, people have to know your name and know what you do and know that you exist to
Right.
come see your show. So we keep at it, and I think our numbers are starting to go up now. We're starting to get people that stumble across us. We stream on YouTube and on my music Facebook page, and maybe just keeping the show going, and it's the same time every week, and we've tried really to up the quality of the image and the audio, We started out with, I don't know, we had like uh, at one point a an iPad duct taped to a mic stand. Um, in the process of trying to get things where it makes sense and get the devices that are meant for this type of application, and we continue to try and make it better. And I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this. We may not stop doing it. You know, even if we're on the road, we may continue to do live stream shows.
Yeah,
It's hard to predict what the future holds, really.
right.
But I'm happy to do it. I actually enjoy doing it now. It was kind of weird in the beginning, but yeah, I totally dig it. I love it.
Have you gotten used to finishing a song and nobody clapping?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have. In fact, you know, some of my friends went out and bought like really nice phones and you know, nice devices, so their image and their audio looks really good, and then they can have the phone right in front of them and they can see what's going on. So I've noticed this thing with live streams where, you know, you finish your song, dun, 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 and then go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I don't have a device in front of me. All I have this camera, and I don't really have any idea what's going on as far as you know people commenting.
yeah.
And I think I'll probably leave it that way.
Well, do you
But
check afterwards?
I do, I do. As soon as I get home, I chime in, and you know everybody's gone by that point. But I do chime in and you know try to thank people and see who commented, and then the people that don't comment, you don't know that they were there. But we do have people coming back from Ireland and Scotland and Tokyo and you know places around South America and Canada and stuff that stumbled across us somehow. You know, they
Yeah,
didn't know about me before this, but they do now, and they keep coming back. So it's
yeah,
it's a lot like you know building a region, you know, in when we're touring, and
yeah.
so I can see the similarities, and it's something that I've pursued for a couple of decades. We're just doing it in a different way now.
Well, you might find some new places where you can go play a show all of a sudden. You know, we might see Cary in Tokyo
Well, that yeah, who knows? Who knows?
if you can do a 22-hour plane flight or whatever it is to get over there. I don't know.
That was actually my first overseas tour that I ever did was in Japan, and that was in the I think the early '90s,
Mm.
and we still have friends over there. So yeah, I'd be happy to go back. I'm happy to. I'd go anywhere. I, truthfully, we're happy to go play pretty much anywhere in the world if people are willing to listen.
Well, and you're in a really neat spot too. I know a lot of people I talk to, you know, they can tour when they're really young, and then they have a family, and then they can't do that anymore.
Right.
You know, and I think about that. I don't have a family yet, but the idea haunts me because it'll happen eventually. Um, yeah, you and Celeste, both of you have grown kids. They're out of the house, and there's nothing tying you down, and there's nothing keeping you from turning the kitchen into a drum kit.
That's right. There's nobody that needs a ride anywhere.
Yeah,
There is,
there's no soccer
um,
practice.
yep, that's all in the past. The the last tour that we did, somehow we ended up down around Dallas for some shows, and my youngest daughter lives in Houston, so we actually went and visited her and her boyfriend in Houston, and I guess that's the difference, you know. The she sent me a message yesterday, and she said, "I love you, Dad, and I can't wait for you guys to come visit."
Yeah,
And I thought, wait a minute, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
when are you coming home? Why don't you come visit me? But she knows that I'm going to be out driving around at some point,
Yeah.
and it makes sense for me to stop by. So we can combine a tour to Dallas with a trip to Houston
Yeah.
to see my favorite child.
Yes, right, right. And I'll make sure they all hear this. Yeah. And is that, do you think that's attributed to your success in some ways? You've been doing the music thing forever, but the success you're seeing right now, the last, 4 or 5 records, is as much as you've ever had, and it's continuing to grow. Um, are you in a place now where you can just totally focus on music and nothing else in a way that maybe you couldn't before?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. But you know, you have to keep in mind that like when I was touring with bands, and our management and agent was in Minneapolis, and I think that he had most of his connections in the Midwest, so we spent a lot of time between here in Chicago and St. Paul and maybe the Dakotas and stuff, a little bit down in Texas, but now everything's in house, and Celeste is really good at putting things together, and she I think deserves all of the credit for you know what's happening with us tour wise and musically. And here's the thing about that is you know back in the day when Mid America Talent in Minneapolis was booking the Atoll, it wasn't a really hard thing for him to sell
Mm.
a four-piece band out of Colorado. A solo acoustic songwriter act, however, is not an easy thing to sell. And
Yeah.
Celeste has figured out a way to do it, and she's figured out like all of the other things that can help supplement that. And she really encouraged the the recordings, and you know we were making a record a year. I know some guys do more than that. Some guys do 2 3 records a year.
Yeah.
Especially now, I see people you know just put out an album and they're just getting ready to release another one, so they got all this time on their hands. But yeah, I really I think that Celeste deserves the credit for figuring out a way to book a solo guy. And one thing that she did was try not to limit our our region to just the U.S.
Yeah.
And try to get us more in front of audiences, or get me in front of audiences in Europe and in the UK. And she actually, our our first tour in Europe that we did, her and I, she booked without an agent. She had some
Oh,
help from a couple of promoters that were regional promoters, you know, that booked, you know, a number of shows in one region. But it took her about a year to put together this tour, and we went over and did it. And it was a success, and then based on the success of that one, we went back and did more.
yeah.
But you know, it's not easy to sell a solo guy, you know, with no rhythm section or anything to venues and to theaters and stuff. So I'm really proud of the hard work and the success that she had. And first of all, learning how to do that and then
Yeah.
pulling it off.
And that episode is really one of my favorites. Back, I believe it was episode 18 with
Yeah.
Celeste, because we started getting into marketing and promotion and things like that, and just some of the things she brought up that I think most people don't think of, and I certainly don't think of, like applying for grants and, really honing in on your audience. And I thought it was very insightful. So go back and check out that episode, folks, episode 18. And then once you get through that, you don't have to do anything. It'll slide right into Cary's first episode for some more background.
Nice.
So going back to the record a little bit, Dockside Saints, you've gotten some really good press on this one. Cowboys and Indians magazine, for one, which can be picked up everywhere, even at, a Barnes and Noble. Maybe you're not going to Barnes and Nobles right now, but it's one of those magazines you can pick up anywhere. Glide magazine wrote a great review. Tower Records put something out, I believe, too. So talk about some of the press you've gotten for this.
Well, again, that was really, a lot of that was Cary Baker at Conqueroo. And especially now, before the pandemic, we really relied on physically getting in front of people in different regions in the U.S. and in Europe. And when this album was finished, I think that we were in Nashville getting it mastered right about the time that everything fell apart. So everything was done except for the artwork by the time we canceled everything and came home. And then we thought, what are we going to do now? It didn't seem like a good idea to release a CD in the middle of a pandemic, and we didn't. You got to remember back in May and June, we didn't really know this thing is it going to have an end? Is this our new normal? And we talked to Cary, and he said, release it, because when this thing is over, everybody's going to have a new album, and I don't think you want to be lost in the shuffle with whatever's going to happen. But that was his prediction, is that everybody's sitting at home writing albums right now. So you got one ready, let's get it out. So we did, and I'm really glad that he encouraged us to do that, because I think it was the right thing to do. So now we have to figure out how to promote an album without a tour. And so, like I said earlier, we had some other publicists and Celeste Talent. Everybody got together and they just did everything that they could to get this album in front of as many people as they could. I think I'd have to ask Celeste. She's in the other room working on something, but I think she sent out somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 or 800 promotional copies.
Wow.
So we kind of flooded the market and sent it to everywhere that everybody's combined lists we could muster. And we did come up against one thing that we had not planned on, that I don't think anybody could have predicted. And the radio list was massive. The number of radio stations that this album went out to for a self-produced CD is kind of absurd almost. The sheer mass mailing that we did, but we did not know that these radio stations were being run remotely for the most part.
Right.
And so I think that the Dockside Saints album was in a lot of inboxes at radio stations that were not being opened.
Wow.
And we didn't find that out until we were well into the process.
Right.
So, kids, remember this.
Yeah.
The next pandemic, the DJs, they're not going to be checking their inboxes at the radio station, so you got to find a way around that. But
might have to call a landline again. Maybe things are turning back the other way.
Yeah, or drones maybe.
Yeah, right.
Well, that was just one of the few issues that we were faced with a pandemic release. Celeste will probably have more stories for you than that, but like I said earlier, the whole thing is a learning process, and I've always considered the music business to be that anyway.
Right.
And so they just pile this on top of everything else. There's a wrong way to do things, which is usually the first thing that I do.
Right.
And then there's the right way that eventually I get around to, and with the help of Celeste and the rest of our crew. I think we did a pretty good job with this one.
I'll say so. And for anybody who's interested, I'm hoping we'll be able to play at least a piece of a track at the end of the episode, and to help encourage people to buy the record. It's a great record. I've streamed it on Spotify, and I just bought my hard copy from your website this morning. So you can go to carymorin.com, and you don't have to search for it. You scroll down about 2 inches, and you can click the buy now. It's got real cool album art on it. It's got your guitar on there, painting of your guitar. So check it out, people. Buy it. This, I guess, won't be aired in time for you to get it shipped before Christmas, unless you choose the overnight shipping option. But, everybody likes a New Year's gift, too.
Well, sure, or just for a no reason at all gift.
A no reason at all gift. That's right. Did we leave out anything?
I don't think so. If we do, I'm available to do this pretty much anytime, every day.
You can be the first 3-parter.
Okay.
Well,
I'm down with the trilogy.
The trilogy, the Cary Morin trilogy. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it, and it's great catching up again as always.
Hey, it was really fun to bump into you and your dad at Telluride, and
oh yeah,
I think that's the last time I saw you in person. But I look forward to a time when we can, go see each other's shows and bump into you out in public again someday.
Absolutely. And I should mention really quick that in Telluride, you had just finished winning the acoustic, what is it called? They have a competition.
The challenge.
The Acoustic Blues Challenge, and you
Yeah.
took first place. So not only did we get to bump into you and Celeste, ordering funnel cakes or whatever, we also got to watch you play a set. So congrats on the victory there.
Thank you very much.
There it is, folks, my conversation with the one and only Cary Morin. Great success with his new record, and I wish him all the success in 2021 and with promoting the record, continuing to promote the record, and whatever he does next, it's going to be great. By the way, when I was introducing Cary at the beginning of the episode, we were listening to Bare Trees in the background, which is off of Dockside Saints. And to end this episode, we're going to listen to another song off of Dockside Saints called Nobody Gotta Know. It's one of my favorite tracks off the album. If you enjoyed the episode, once again, it's completely free to rate and write a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It only takes a second, and it really does help me out a lot. If you're in a position to help out in a monetary way, I'm now on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sydow, Sydow, and that's where I post up exclusive content for both my career and the podcast. And it helps ensure that this podcast can keep going and keep growing, and I appreciate it very much. You can do that for as little as $3 per month. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hate mail, or death threats, you can direct them to me at middleclassrockstar@gmail.com. Here's Nobody Gotta Know. Thanks so much for listening.
Before the sun comes up, looks like somebody got themselves too deep in the cup. Now you got yours, got mine.